What if one night, just one ordinary night, you realize that some of the most famous faces on the planet weren't quite human anymore? Not metaphorically, not in the fame changed them kind of way. I mean something deeper, something wrong. Think about it. Have you ever watched an interview with a celebrity and felt that strange, quiet discomfort you couldn't explain? The smile that looks perfect, but somehow empty. The eyes that seem awake, but not really there. Most people brush that feeling off. They call it aging, surgery, stress, fame. But what if those explanations are just the stories we tell ourselves so we can keep watching? Because a few years ago, something happened to me in the Hollywood Hills that completely shattered the way I see this industry. It started like any other Friday night in Los Angeles. Music, drinks, strangers, and the familiar glow of a city built on illusion. But by the end of that night, I wasn't wondering about celebrities anymore. I was wondering what they had become, and more importantly, what was hiding behind their faces. Los Angeles has a strange way of revealing people if you pay attention long enough. Most people never notice it because they're too busy performing their own version of themselves. In this city, everyone is acting, sometimes literally, sometimes socially, sometimes in ways so subtle even they don't realize it. But I've always been unusually good at noticing the cracks. I don't mean reading body language from a self-help book. I mean something quieter than that. The small mechanical delays in people, the half-second pause before someone laughs when the joke wasn't actually funny. The moment a smile begins, but stops before reaching the eyes. The way someone's shoulders drop when a certain name gets mentioned. Little things, tiny glitches in the performance. I've had that ability for as long as I can remember. Somewhere between childhood and adulthood, my brain just started noticing patterns in people that others seemed to miss. And the strange part is, I've never really been wrong. A couple years ago, I went on a date with a woman a mutual friend introduced me to. She was beautiful, funny in text messages, confident, the kind of person who seems interesting before you even meet them. She showed up 20 minutes late. Traffic, she said. The story was detailed enough to sound convincing, but also detailed enough to feel rehearsed. We sat down, ordered drinks, started talking. Within 4 minutes, I knew 3 things. She was still in love with someone else. She wasn't there because she was interested in me. She was there to prove something to herself. And the entire evening was going to be a performance, a version of herself she wished someone else had appreciated. I didn't say any of that. I just watched the evening unfold exactly the way I expected it to. 2 weeks later, she texted me saying she had gotten back together with her ex. I wasn't surprised. That's just how my brain works. Now imagine living in Los Angeles with that ability. A city built almost entirely on illusion, status, and carefully constructed personas. Actors playing actors, influencers performing authenticity, executives pretending they're relaxed while calculating everything in the room. It's fascinating at first. Then eventually it just becomes exhausting. But it also means something important. I'm not the kind of person who gets dazzled easily. I don't lose my head when I'm around famous people or expensive rooms or exclusive invitations. Which is why what happened that Friday night still bothers me. Because nothing about that night should have surprised me. It started like any other Friday. No plans, no expectations. Just that particular feeling of relief that comes when a long week finally lets go of your shoulders. I drove down Sunset Boulevard with the windows down the way I always do. There's a moment around 10 o'clock when Los Angeles feels like it exhales. The city lights soften. The air carries the smell of jasmine from somewhere in the hills, mixed with car exhaust and ambition. It's hard to explain if you've never lived there. The whole city feels like something is about to happen. I ended up at a small bar I'd been to a few times before. Nothing flashy. Good music, dim lighting, the kind of place where the crowd feels interesting without trying too hard to be interesting. I ordered a drink and leaned against the bar, and like always, I watched. There was a guy near the entrance checking his phone every 90 seconds. Nervous energy. He ordered the most expensive drink on the menu without looking at the price, clearly trying to impress someone who hadn't arrived yet. 2 women sat by the window. One was talking. The other was waiting for her turn to talk. At the far end of the bar, a man was drinking alone and looked completely at peace with it. My kind of person. The night felt easy, comfortable. The kind of night where nothing unexpected is supposed to happen. And that's usually when everything changes. She walked in at exactly 11:15. I noticed her immediately, not because she was loud or trying to command attention, but because of the way she moved through the room. Deliberate, unhurried. Most people enter a crowded space with a subtle nervousness. Their eyes search quickly. Their body language asks silent questions. Where do I stand? Who do I know? Who's watching? She didn't do any of that. Instead, she scanned the room. Not nervously, not socially, systematically. The same way I do. She looked at people the way someone might look at a map, quietly cataloging information, taking inventory of everyone in the space without appearing to. Most people would have missed that detail completely. I didn't. That moment alone hooked my attention faster than anything else about her. Her face was beautiful, sure. Her clothes were stylish without being loud, but those things were secondary. The scan was what caught me, because in a room full of people performing for each other, she was the only one watching the performance. I walked over and introduced myself. She wasn't surprised. She had already noticed me too. The conversation started effortlessly, the way the best conversations do. It felt less like two strangers meeting and more like we had skipped the awkward beginning entirely. She was sharp. Every sentence landed cleanly. No filler words, no rambling thoughts, just clear, precise communication. She had that dry kind of humor that intelligent people often have, the kind that sneaks up on you because the setup sounds so casual you don't expect the punchline. Within 20 minutes, I was completely engaged. We talked about the city first, the strange psychology of Los Angeles, the way people chase dreams there while pretending they're not chasing anything at all. She had opinions, strong ones, but she delivered them with warmth rather than arrogance, at least at first. After a while, I started noticing something. No matter what direction the conversation went, it always found its way back to the same topic: geopolitics, global inequality, American foreign policy, what powerful nations owe to weaker ones, what privileged people owe to suffering people. She spoke about it with real intensity, the kind of conviction that lives in someone's chest rather than their head. Passionate, focused, almost urgent. I told myself she was just someone who cared deeply about the world. Plenty of people are like that. Then about 40 minutes into the conversation, she told a joke, a genuinely funny one, the kind that catches you off guard because the setup sounds completely ordinary until the punchline lands. I laughed, an actual laugh, not the polite kind. She smiled, and that's when I noticed something strange. The smile started perfectly, warm, natural, exactly the right expression for the moment, but it only moved from her mouth. Nothing above it changed. Her eyes didn't soften. Her cheeks didn't lift. It was like the smile had instructions for the lower half of her face, but no guidance for the rest. Just stillness. Not cold, not hostile, just empty, like the emotion had been programmed but not fully executed. I held on to that observation for about 3 seconds before dismissing it. Maybe she was tired. Maybe the lighting made it look strange. People aren't machines. Not every expression is perfect. I ordered another drink and let the thought go. A little while later, she mentioned a party. She said it casually, like someone mentioning the weather. There was an event happening up in the hills. Private, invite only, the kind of gathering most people never even hear about. She didn't try to sell it. She didn't lean in or lower her voice for effect. She simply mentioned it like she already knew what my answer would be, and she was right. I said yes before she even finished the sentence. The Uber arrived 4 minutes later. She was already walking toward the door before I had even finished putting my phone away. Inside the car, something about her changed. She became completely still. Her hands rested neatly in her lap, her posture straight, her eyes focused forward. I tried starting conversation twice during the ride. Both times she answered with one precise sentence, nothing more. Then silence again, not awkward silence, intentional silence. I noticed something else. She hadn't checked her phone once all night. Not while we were talking, not while we waited for the Uber, not even during the ride. In Los Angeles, that alone is almost unnatural. Then I noticed the blinking, slow, measured. Like blinking was something she had to consciously remember to do every so often. The Uber eventually stopped on a quiet street in the hills. It was almost unnaturally silent. No music, no line outside, no sign on the building, just a door. She walked straight toward it without knocking or pressing a buzzer. Before she reached it, the door opened. I followed her inside, and the moment the door closed behind me, something deep in my chest shifted. At the time, I couldn't name the feeling. Hours later, sitting alone in the dark, I finally understood it. It was the feeling of a trap quietly closing. The first thing I noticed about the party was how beautiful it was. And I want to be honest about that because it matters. The space was perfect. High ceilings, warm lighting that made everyone look better than they probably did in daylight, and music playing at exactly the right volume, loud enough to give the room energy, quiet enough that conversation didn't require effort. People were dressed well, not flashy, just the effortless kind of expensive you see in certain parts of Hollywood. On the surface, it looked exactly like what you'd expect from an exclusive gathering in the hills. But something felt wrong. At first, it was subtle. My instinct for reading people kicked in the moment I stepped into the room. Normally, when you walk into a crowded space, you feel waves of emotion, excitement, nervousness, attraction, competition, curiosity. Human gatherings are chaotic by nature. This room wasn't chaotic. It was controlled. People were talking, but no one seemed animated. No one laughed too loudly. No one interrupted each other. No one spilled drinks or leaned in too close or did any of the thousand small, unpredictable things that make a real party feel alive. Everything moved with a strange kind of rhythm, like a perfectly rehearsed scene. Servers moved through the room carrying trays of dark jerky, cut into thin uniform strips. No one was offering it. People simply reached out and took pieces as the trays passed by, automatically, like breathing. I took a piece without thinking. The smell hit me first. Wood smoke, copper, and something underneath both of those scents that I couldn't quite identify. Something old, something metallic. I took one bite. The flavor was heavy and strange, so I set the rest on a napkin and moved deeper into the room. I didn't think about it again at the time. The first person I spoke to seemed completely normal. A regular guest near the bar accidentally bumped into me and spilled a little of his drink. He apologized immediately and made a self-deprecating joke about it that was actually funny. We talked for a minute or two. Normal conversation, natural rhythm. I laughed. He laughed. For a moment, I felt my shoulders relax. Maybe I had misread the atmosphere. Maybe it was just a slightly formal crowd. Then I saw a very recognizable face, standing only a few feet away. Famous enough that anyone would recognize him instantly. I walked over and introduced myself. He turned toward me and lit up immediately, the way a lamp lights up when someone flips a switch. Big smile, firm handshake, warm energy. He started talking before I could even finish my introduction. He began discussing global politics, America's role in the world, responsibility towards struggling nations, the moral obligations of powerful countries. He spoke with passion and urgency, but something about it felt, scripted. I nodded and asked a follow-up question, something specific that required an actual response. He answered, same energy, same phrases, just slightly rearranged. I tried again from a different angle. Once again, the same phrases appeared, delivered in almost the exact same order. That's when the realization hit me. I wasn't having a conversation. I was listening to a broadcast. It didn't matter who I was. The message would have been identical if anyone else had been standing in my place. I looked into his eyes while he was talking. They were open, they were focused, but they felt empty, like lights on in a house where no one lived anymore. Something deep behind those eyes felt distant, like it was watching the conversation from far away rather than participating in it. He suddenly laughed at something I hadn't even said. The laugh sounded perfect, but his eyes didn't move at all. I excused myself and stepped away. Before I had even fully turned around, he was already speaking to someone else behind me. Same tone, same phrases, word for word. I moved farther into the room. Another celebrity near the center of the space greeted someone and spoke about unity and healing in almost identical language. Across the room, two women were having a conversation that sounded strangely familiar. The same themes, the same rhythm, the same words repeating again and again in slightly different arrangements. It felt like listening to multiple radios, all tuned to the same station. Then I noticed something else. The jaw lines. Too clean, too symmetrical. Once you saw it, you couldn't stop seeing it. The same sculpted shape appearing again and again across different faces. as if the same invisible hand had worked on all of them. And suddenly the room felt colder, not physically, but psychologically, like the illusion had cracked just enough for something underneath to show through. That's when I saw him, standing quietly near the back wall. Jim Carrey, not the energetic, expressive performer I had grown up watching on screen. Still, almost too still. I must have been staring longer than I realized because he noticed. He walked toward me slowly. When he stopped in front of me, he studied my face for a moment, really studied it. Then he said something quietly. "You look like someone who just figured something out." He smiled and walked away. The smile was perfect, but just like hers earlier that night, it never reached his eyes. Standing there in that perfectly lit room full of famous faces, I felt something I hadn't felt since I was a kid. Fear, not loud panic, quiet fear. The kind that settles slowly into your chest when your instincts realize something before your mind does. And in that moment, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever was happening in that house, I wasn't supposed to understand it. If this story made you pause for a second, if part of you is still wondering what was really going on inside that house, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. And I'm curious about something. Have you ever watched a celebrity interview and felt like something about them seemed off? Not tired, not nervous, just different. Tell me in the comments which celebrity gave you that feeling, because after that night in the Hollywood Hills, I started noticing it everywhere.